If we set aside for a moment the unrest in the world and the supply chain issues, it is still important to know that for most of the world, we are starving to death slowly. This is not clickbait. Even the experts are stating such only in very subdued verbiage. Let's do a talk about. Hello anyone, I'm Scott Bain. They call me the old farmer. Why the world is starving is a farming problem, one that we as customers to food vendors of various types must insist that they address. Or we should grow all the food we need ourselves. If we did thusly, we don't need the rest of this video. This is near impossible. Either the climate is not to the liking of some of the foods we like, or feel would be difficult to live without, such as coffee. Some others are more difficult to grow and process, such as wheat, or other grains that will grow in a good portion of the world. Personally, if I can get cleaned grain, I have the means to make crude flour. Most folks won't even be able to do this, let alone know what to do with flour of various grains. The dilemma, problem, issue, emergency, or whatever you wish to call the circumstance, is that there is less nutrition in our food and that it's getting worse every year. If we eat commercially grown foods that do not treat the land, the earth that grows the food, as a needed resource for growing nutritionally rich foods, whether it's fruits, vegetables, animals, fish, or fungi, we are effectively starving ourselves nutritionally. We are not getting all the nutrition we need from the foods we eat. This is why we are seeing so many health issues, especially in the United States. Give children poor nutrition and they get bouncing off the walls. Put them on mind-altering drugs to control this, and about 1 or 2% will become violent, such as in the many shootings. Take away the guns, they will use other tools. Fix the problem, go back to non-processed foods, and the majority of the issues of health and mental outlook will self-correct. If you have a child that fits this description, save the processed foods for special occasions, but get them back to the food that actually gives them nutrition. If you don't know how to cook, get The Joy of Cooking or one of the many other cookbooks that teach basic cooking. It will teach you to cook from scratch. Talk to your medical team about specifics, but understand most doctors haven't got a clue about nutrition. Organic does not mean nutritional. Grow your own food or buy from local growers. Can your own vegetables with foods from trusted sources, or again, grow it yourself. I love my potato chips, but the amount I eat is far below 1% of my caloric intake. Besides, I'm in my 70s. Granted, we don't expect all the nutrition from the perfect potato chip. These tasty little morsels are for teasing the buds with good crunch and flavor that cannot be found in anything else, but in reasonable amounts. Just remember, though, when eating a potato chip, we are eating stolons, which are not actually vegetables. Stolon is a fancy name for the root of the plant, even though we treat such foods as vegetables. If the needed nutrients for healthy growth is not in the land, naturally or as a supplement, the foods we eat will not be nutritionally sound. Also, there are micronutrients that could be missing and nutrients that we may not yet know about that could be lacking in the foods we eat because of the lack of good stewardship of the land. We also need minerals in microdoses, even though some in large amounts can be poisonous. This can be added to the ground as crushed rock, ground is fine as talc that will break down even further, giving the proper nourishment to the crops over several years. If I were operating a commercial farm in the wheat belt, I would budget an application of crushed rock every 5 years, but actually base it on testing as to when crushed rock should be added. We don't actually need experts to tell us that all or most of the nutrients that we need are no longer in the ground where commercial growers raise their crops. Commercially, we can grow food, but it is incomplete foods. While researching this topic, I knew there was a wealth of information available. When I went back to find this information that I had found back in the 80s while belonging to a food cooperative, I can no longer find it. It has been wiped from the internet. I have asked the various government agencies for this information, and all they are doing is sourcing the information that is still on the World Wide Web, which no longer contains such information for comparison purposes. The internet has been well known for having things evaporate from the net. As an example, I remember that an ear of corn was 18% protein back in 1912. It is now between 3 and 9%. Back in 1980, it was 12%. I can find charts for what our food contains today for 2022 or for the last several years. The way the information is now presented, it is in the intake for a person for a day. This is not the information we need. We need to have the nutritional information from the beginning of the 20th century for each individual product and the nutrition that was in such foods at the time to compare with the foods we eat today. Even though the accuracy of such information from the 1900s will not be as accurate as the information gathered today, it is still a benchmark towards what nutrition should be in our foods. I've heard the comment from someone, or read it, I can't remember. The person said that it is as if we are growing our foods, that is commercially grown, as if hydroponically, which means grown in water. If we don't add the proper nutrients, we will not get very much out of what we eat. Corn is nutrient intensive in growing. Rice is even worse. We have burned the nutrients out of the land by growing the same thing over and over and over and over again. We have been cheating by adding the minimal fertilizers to the ground and crops. Basically, it's NPK. N is for nitrogen. P is for potash or phosphorus. K is for potassium. It doesn't make sense that potassium is signified by the letter K, until you're told that in Latin, potassium is called kalium. I thought kalium was a cousin of Superman, but that's just me. One of the main reasons why past civilizations have collapsed is the ground was worn out and could not grow the needed food. This happened to the Mayan civilization, which collapsed when they wore out the land in South America some 300 years ago. This has happened numerous times to many past civilizations. Crops need to be rotated, with various plants replacing the previous year's plant's uptake. Back on the farm, we rotated between corn the first year, wheat the second year, 2 years of alfalfa, and then pasture land for the cows for 1 year. In the fall, we used cow manure on all our fields. We did use commercial fertilizers, which is not a bad thing to enhance the ground during planting. We were not abusing the land because each year the loam, the dirt itself, became more abundant. We could tell because it was climbing our fencing. We had cattle fence surrounding every field, and the first 2 squares of the fencing were buried in the ground. And we had earthworms all over the place. The only reason that North America is feeding the world is because of NPK. We are not adding back the minerals that are needed and also the micronutrients to grow the healthiest plants. To be honest, I don't know how we can do sustained farming, what we did back on the farm, commercially. Not today. That is, crop rotation, and the needed compost to replace what was taken from the ground for the crops that were grown. My feeling is the needed data is being hidden from us, and that we must demand that this information is released and published so that we can make proper decisions about what we eat and what should be in our food nutritionally. Back when Mrs. Old Farmer and I belonged to a food co-op, I did 10 minutes on the local CBS affiliate during the 11 o'clock news about the importance of organic foods versus non-organic. The importance is the pesticides that are used. It doesn't matter if the nitrogen comes from animal poop or from ammonia right out of the bottle. What matters is how much nitrogen is added. Does it kill the microbes we need in the ground? If it does, it's too much nitrogen. The same is true for everything else. The Midwest wheat fields need compost as a source for carbon and ground rock for minerals, at the very least. It needs to be tested for all the little things that are needed to make food grow as it should. As I said, I did 10 minutes on the 11 o'clock news, when a long story usually ran 3 minutes. We just happened to walk into a co-op store and saw an interview being recorded. Afterwards, I said, if you want, I'll do a War and Peace version about organic foods and what really matters. I think I did about a half hour, which was edited down to 10 minutes, that was aired. I heard it knocked 4 other stories out of the newscast. In essence, what I said was, unless there is sensitivities about chemicals used to grow food, being organic or not does not really matter. Where it is important to consider organic is the pesticides used on the plants. That is, to me, the main issue in organic foods. Now let me add that we need to have nutritionally balanced foods, which is determined by how it's grown. This is not addressed in organic foods. For now, the simplest solution to this problem until we get our government to mandate nutrition in our foods is to grow as much food ourselves. Don't spray poisons on our lawns and trees so that the clippings can be used in our gardens. The first year, the grass clippings can be weed control around the plants. The second year, it's mulch that becomes part of the dirt. In other words, stop composting and layer the materials onto your garden. Each year, the previous year's weed control is this year's mulch that feeds your plants. Granted, some of the things like twigs or some manures will need to be broken down in a compost bin. We must insist that our foods, from wherever they come from, are nutritionally fortified by proper growing techniques. The whole world is starting to starve because the calories we eat are empty calories. If we do not turn around the way we grow our food, everyone will be in a third world country, maybe with plenty of calories, but without nutrition. And as a last comment, we must also teach third world countries better ways to grow their own foods so that they can have a healthier life, and then they can do more for themselves and their families. I have found a limited amount of information, and I have provided the links down below. I can no longer find the charts we need to compare the nutrients of the past to the nutrients of today. But to be honest, we always knew growing our own food gave us the best nutrition for the calorie. Many places have groups, or some online, that will help you start a garden, even if it's in pots on your porch. And at least grow some herbs in a window pot. Herbs are a great source for nutrition. If I find any additional information, I will add the links below. And please, if you have any links, share them with the rest of us. Before we go, it's important to quickly mention for all who are visiting to subscribe, ring the bell, leave a comment, and share with friends and family. Now for the most important part, thank you to those who have subscribed. Thank you. And yes, thank you to those who are visiting. We value you too. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers so that we may receive a pittance from YouTube to cover expenses. We replaced one camera, tripod, and bought a water-cooled editor for video production, plus all the tools we review. So if you could help us reach that 1,000 subscription point, thank you. Well, this is the old farmer Scott Bain. Be well, be safe, and be kind to someone.
Don't forget to click like and click subscribe on the Old Farmer YouTube channel. And thanks again for watching. Bye.
The VFW National Home for Children, providing families of veterans and active duty military opportunities for growth and development in a nurturing community. Please consider a donation to help their children and families. I.C. Rhodes speaking.